because that is a hard distinction to make sometimes.
It doesn't have to have anything to do with weddings to inspire you. So
in this household, there is a 3-beverage rule.
This is The Guide Gals, a modern wedding-focused podcast by the experts at Here Comes the Guide. I'm Chelsea, a designer and inspired creative who's probably racked up over 4,000 hours on Pinterest, and the friend who's going to shoot it to you straight.
And I'm Caroline, a social media manager who is obsessed with dogs as ring bearers and will inevitably cry over your wedding video. We've seen it from all sides. We've been brides, planners, bridesmaids, and have worked with stand-up brands throughout the industry.
Think of us as an extension of your wedding party and hang out with us as we share the ins, outs, ups, and downs of the road to I Do.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast for another episode, one that we are both super passionate about, and so we're super excited to share it with you. We're going to talk about how to brand your wedding.
Yes, we are super excited about this one. We both love the subject. You can think of branding not only applying to influencers or brides with super big budgets and planners and all of that stuff. Anyone can do it. It can totally be a DIY thing. We promise that this isn't as fancy as it sounds, and branding your wedding is simply having a set of guidelines to the overall look and vibe of your wedding day.
Yeah, so seriously, to be clear, branding your wedding isn't about having this like Pinterest perfect aesthetic. Instead, it's landing on what you want your celebration to embody, both visually and emotionally, and bringing this all to life through color, ambience, personalized elements, and super thoughtful details. But before we even jump further into the episode and what all of this branding entails, as always, I need to know, what are we drinking this morning?
This morning I'm drinking coffee, which is no surprise. I think I've had coffee every single time, and I think I have the exact same thing as last time. Home coffee, Maxwell House, hazelnut creamer. So
Love.
Exciting stuff.
I love it. I actually am going to finally let you all in on my secret. The reason we go over our beverages every day is because we're beverage obsessed. Like, I think we've mentioned that before. But even more so, I am a 3-beverage person. And today I do indeed have 3 beverages right around me. So let me grab those for you so you can see what I'm talking about. They're diverse. In this household, there is a 3-beverage rule. There is always one for hydration. You have to have water all the time. I've talked about my Stanley before. So that's easy. Number 1. Second one, caffeination. Coffee. Usually, sometimes maybe a Celsius, matcha, whatever your caffeine of choice is, caffeine. Then there's one just for fun. Today, that's Olipop. We're not sponsored. If you ever want to, though, we would gladly, because we both genuinely
we both
love
Olipop, yeah.
Yes, we love an Olipop. That's for today.
That's incredible. I'm dehydrated, but all I have is coffee, so good for you, Caroline.
Thank you. I don't usually bring all of my beverages up to the podcast, but today I did, so I just thought I would let you in on my secret.
So now that we have all of our beverages established, I am super excited to start talking about branding your wedding. This is something that I have a lot of experience in. I've worked with branding businesses for 5+ years now. I love it. It's so much fun. So I'm really excited to talk about how you can incorporate branding into your wedding and your personal life too. It doesn't just have to be for businesses. Obviously, I have a lot to say about this matter.
And coming from an aspect of like, I would have never thought about branding my wedding when I was planning my wedding. And so I think this is a really cool topic to talk about, because now that Chelsea has enlightened me as to like why branding is so important for even the smallest things, I'll kind of touch about how that's changed even my personal life. So I want to talk about the benefits that you can get just specifically for branding your wedding. And you'll maybe kind of see this throughout all of the different tips that we're going to talk about. But I really want to start here with, why does this benefit you? Why are you listening to this episode? Branding your wedding can really benefit you in a lot of ways, but we kind of narrowed it down to 4. First, having some general aesthetic guidelines will tie your entire event together. So you're building these guidelines for yourself, and it's going to help tie all of these elements together. And we kind of mentioned this earlier, both aesthetically, like visually, and emotionally. It will also make your design decisions easier by giving them structure. So you're starting to put these guidelines in place. So your decisions are now going to be easier, quicker. And we love that for you for a wedding planning process. It's also a super effective tool when you're communicating your wants and your wedding vision with your vendors. So it becomes really clear for everybody working on it. Maybe not even necessarily your vendors, but if you have family members who are doing things, for you to communicate that to your partner, to your bridal party, whoever it may be, super useful communication tool after you've branded your wedding. It can also help keep planning focused and keeping everything pretty streamlined, which inherently becomes less stressful. Because if you have this like focused, very clear guidelines, all of these like other things put together, inherently you will have less stress because it's a very clear vision that everybody is working towards. So this is really why branding your wedding is like, yeah, it sounds really cool and it sounds, I don't know. Mm-hmm. It could sound like, oh, that's just like for people who understand branding. Like, no, like everybody can do this and there are so many benefits.
Yeah, so many benefits. And it does sound like kind of an extra step or like you're being extra by doing this. But like Caroline said, it can really help simplify your planning process because it will alleviate that stress. You have less decisions to make once you've kind of made all of the big decisions as far as, the look and feel, the visual aspects of your wedding. So we love it. We're big fans.
Yes,
a great place to start. Yeah. A great place to start where we recommend starting is to find your keywords for your wedding day. So this is actually exactly where I start to when I'm creating a brand for a business is to find these keywords. We recommend going through a series of questions, especially if you're struggling with keywords that might not be coming to mind, that might not be top of mind. So this is what I have done with lots of clients before is I send a questionnaire their way, they answer the questions, and then what I do is I go through those answers and I pull out keywords and things that stand out to me. So some questions that you can ask yourself are, do we want the wedding to be more time-honored and traditional or more fresh and forward-thinking? How would we describe our interior design style or our fashion sense? That's a really cool one. Are there any hobbies, passions, or unique aspects of our personalities, culture, relationship that we would like to creatively weave through the design? What photography style appeals to you the most? What do you want those wedding photos to look like? So think light and airy, dark and moody, maybe more classic or artistic. What season are you going to get married in? So that has a lot to do with it too. So are you going to incorporate a more of a seasonal color palette? Is it outdoors? Lots of things to think about there. And what do you want your guests to say about the wedding once it's over? So answering these questions, maybe even answering them without necessarily thinking about the brand of your wedding, and just answering them as genuinely as possible. I also say don't take too much time to answer these questions. Go with your gut feeling because the most natural answer is going to come out there. And then once you have that, you can go through and, like I said, pull out those keywords. It can be, vibe, keywords, general aesthetic things. It can be colors that you might mention or feelings. Those are my favorite ones. Some examples of keywords that you can think of: welcoming, joyful, colorful, cozy, modern, glamorous, intimate, adventurous, casual, inclusive, energetic, elevated, artistic. There's so many. And there's really the ones that are like more personal to your love story are the best. So they're not going to be the same for everybody, but that's what makes it really great.
I know. I love like there's so many elements here just to start out with that I think are going to help your overall vision so much. Like I feel like everyone, like you said, inherently kind of knows what they want the feel of their wedding to be. Maybe the visual elements are still kind of being figured out. But that's why I love that keywords can be those emotions, that they can be that like, I want my wedding to feel super welcoming. I want it to feel laid back, and like you can already start to imagine those visual components come together after you have some of those emotional keywords. I think it's so fun to start there, and again, not something I would have thought about initially, but it's like the perfect place to start.
Right. And it's such a great place to start because you want to build a solid foundation. Whenever you're creating a brand of any kind, you don't just want to start by naming colors that you love. Of course, you can incorporate that at any stage. You can start thinking of those things. But if you really start just like building a house, building a brand, building anything is the same way. You have to have that strong foundation and work up from there. So the keywords really help you to, have a good starting block.
Yes.
Good.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense.
It creates the path for you. It's a great framework for
Yes.
the whole brand that you're going to create.
Well, then our next step and the next building block of what we're creating is to pin images that support these keywords. So you've gotten some clarity by identifying these wedding keywords, so the emotions, the kind of feel. And now you're going to head over to Pinterest and start saving images that align with this list of keywords. If you've already been pinning like crazy, that's great. Sometimes it's helpful to start with a fresh slate once you have identified your keywords, and maybe just don't be surprised. Some of those pins might end up over there anyways. But who knows? Maybe after you identify your keywords, if you've already pinned images, there may be some that you look at and you're now like, actually, that doesn't fit anymore. And great. So filter out those ones that don't fit, and curate some ones that really do create a collection of images that support that keywords. Also, as you are doing this, don't limit yourself to just wedding photos. I know that can feel, pretty natural. This is my wedding board. Like, why wouldn't I start pinning these wedding images? But you also might want to pin things that get your creative juices flowing. So maybe there's a typography that you love. Maybe there's a pattern, a texture that you are really feeling like fits well into this vision that you're creating. Maybe it's flora and fauna that's not necessarily wedding specific, or just other imagery that really sparks this creative feeling for you. As long as they align with those wedding keywords, doesn't really matter exactly what they are, don't have to be wedding specific. They'll be fair game to add to your Pinterest board.
Yeah, that's a really important one to remember. An example that I like to use a lot is it doesn't have to have anything to do with weddings to inspire you. So I love Anthropologie. So does Caroline. We both do.
Yes.
We love their clothes. We love their home set stuff, like their homewares, their like ceramic stuff, and like, I don't know, tableware is like my favorite. But that really has nothing to do with what I do. It has nothing to do with usually like a brand that I'm creating. And it, although they do have a wedding line, okay, they do sell wedding dresses, but it doesn't really have to do with a wedding. So you can go on Pinterest and you can find stuff that inspires you and you can pin it, and it doesn't have to have anything to do with weddings. So you could maybe, like, you're really inspired by nature. You can pin photos of nature and you can pull feelings from that. Peaceful, maybe serene, those are kind of like the same word, but or colors, like lots of things. So don't be afraid to veer from that. Also, when you are pinning, you can get really carried away with Pinterest, but there's a few tips that you should keep in the back of your head when you're pinning for these kinds of things. So firstly, you've set the foundation and you found those keywords and things that you want to stick to as you're creating this brand. So make sure that you do adhere to that. On Pinterest especially, there's so many pretty photos and so much wedding content out there that if you search, there might be stuff that you're attracted to, but always keep those keywords in the back of your mind when you start pinning, because you might be attracted to it. You might think it's really pretty and cool, but does it really fall into the category or does it piece together as part of the brand that you're trying to create? Something to keep in mind. You don't want to limit yourself, but try to just, stay in your lane. And then more ends up being better. So you're going to eventually use these Pinterest photos for something. We'll get into that in our next step. But you don't want to pin 10 photos and call it a day. I would say 50 to 75 photos on a board is a great starting point, but going beyond that is great too. You don't need, 500 pictures on there, but somewhere like 50 to 100 is great, and you'll have a lot to work with as far as inspiration goes. You'll see that when you're pinning, you might have like 30 pins on there and it might seem like a ton, but when you go to actually use that stuff and reference it, you'll find that it's nothing. You need a little bit more to work with. So I would aim for at the very least 50 pins on your inspiration board. And if you have more time to put into it, the better. Yeah. Keep going.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. And I feel like That's so true. Like getting some more things on there, because as you compile all of those things, you may find, actually, now that this pin is on here, compared to all of the other great ones I have, not feeling it as much. So
Right.
the more you get, I feel like the more fine tuned, but there is a point where it's like maybe too much.
Right. You
Anyways,
don't want to turn it into a full-time job, but you could easily sit down, turn on your favorite movie, and just pin for an hour and a half, and
oh
you'll
yeah.
probably have all that you need on there. Yeah. Same as the questionnaire. You don't need to spend hours and hours and hours, and you don't have to like get you
Too
know what
bogged
you
down
want.
with it.
Trust your gut. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
The next step is to put together a mood board. So this is where using those pins that you just took time on is going to come in handy. And like I said, having at least 50 is going to be great for this. So when you're creating a mood board, of course, you can go the old fashioned route. You can print stuff out or even like cut stuff out of magazines and glue it to a poster board and all of that stuff. But there are great resources out there. We love Canva. If you haven't heard of it, it is a free design tool. It's just canva.com. There is a paid version, but you don't have to do that by any means. And they have lots of mood board templates on there that you can use. You can just drag and drop photos in there. You'll want to, or you'll find that having more photos in your Pinterest board is better, because even though you might have tons of photos of nature, that's an example that I used, you will find that you don't want your whole board to be nature, and you might want to throw just some plain colors in, some textures. You want to have some nice variation. You'll want to make sure that the photos that you choose are still adhering to that vibe that you've created for your brand, but you'll want to make sure that there is diversity throughout the mood board and that the photos also go well together. So this is going to take some time, and once again, trusting your gut and putting in there what you're attracted to the most. We recommend having at least 10 photos on your mood board. 9 is okay too. I've seen like a grid before. That's how I typically create them, actually, is 9 photos and then some colors as well. But somewhere in there is a good place to land as far as numbers go.
Yeah. And I really feel like, don't feel like, as a pro tip, don't feel like the mood board has to be perfectly matchy, but like you do want the overall vibe to feel cohesive, but it doesn't have to be like perfectly matchy. And maybe we can throw up some examples of maybe something that's a little bit too matchy, and then maybe something that's a little bit more cohesive but still gives varied elements, because that is a hard distinction to make sometimes, and sometimes that can be a good visual indicator. So if you're listening to the podcast, just know that we have a YouTube version where you can watch if you want to check out, see our faces or see other things that we might pop up on the screen. But really also here, I want to mention that I have started to make mood boards for every month of the year, which sounds kind of, again, overkill, maybe dramatic. It's been so fun for me because I will pin, like Chelsea said, a bunch of different images. I don't do like 50 to 100 per month. I usually find maybe between 30 and 50, just because, especially in the summer months, some of the things that I've been prioritizing have been very similar. So I know the general feel of what I want, but I pin images, textures, even small, simple moments that just like capture the feel that I want for the month. And then I make a little mood board out of it. Typically I have like 10 images. And then I make that mood board my screensaver, like my screensaver. That sounds so dated of me. No, my wallpaper on my phone. And
I
so
knew what you meant.
every time I look at my lock screen, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm working towards, or this is the feel that I want. Like, it helps center me back to what I want out of a certain month. These things that every time I look at it, I would be so inspired and so centered back to like what I wanted out of the month. So that's a kind of little side note of how some personal branding has helped me and kind of help center me back around some of the things that I love and want to do. Maybe you could use that in your wedding planning. Maybe you make this mood board, make it your background, your lock screen on your phone, to continue to help you look for those things and center you back around your branding.
Yeah, I love that. I think branding can and should be, if you want it to be more fun, used in so many different areas. Like Caroline said, she uses this as a guide for how she wants her month to go. And this is how you can have your mood board serve you for your wedding as well. So you can show this to your planner along with keywords. It's great to share those with them too. And it'll make things great. Or if you have a planner or any of your vendors or anyone
Yes.
really, it'll be super helpful to convey what you're looking for. Maybe you show it to your florist. It might be just helpful for them to see what your color ideas look like and just general vibe. They might have great suggestions if you don't already have an idea of exactly what flowers you want, for example. So
Yeah, yeah. And I think as a pro tip, is something I've learned from using this for personal branding, is I've learned not to expect things to turn out like the exact image I've pinned. Like I don't
right.
look to recreate that exact photo, or I know it's not going to look exactly like it, but it really does help curate what, the feel, the vibe, and I get somewhere close to it, and that feels really, really good. But close to it in my personal way, like it becomes my
Right.
own. So
Yeah, making
I
it
think that's important.
uniquely yours, yeah, in any way that you can is always going to be or always going to create the best results. So,
Yes, especially when it comes to a wedding. Okay, now that we've talked a lot about mood board, pinning things, imagery, the vibe, the keywords, now you're going to want to start to finalize some things. And the first thing we want you to finalize is some of those colors. That's going to like help you choose a lot of different things. So picking those colors that you find maybe within your mood board or things that just resonate with you the most. And you also want them to coordinate well with each other. So we recommend kind of finding 3 to 6 colors that you feel drawn to build your color palette and making sure that they are pretty cohesive. So you will want a good mix of light, dark tones for contrast, and you can even stretch your color palette by like working with opacity for different colors. So maybe you have a lighter purple and a darker purple that are going to complement each other really well, but could be used in very different ways. So it's helpful as you're deciding on these colors for your color palette to really solidify down to the hex code or
yes.
yes, the like different color codes, because at a certain point you get those things solidified, you can hand them off to a planner, or you could look for things within those specific codes. And if you don't know what this means, hex codes or CMYK color codes, it's helpful to know whatever color code that you've chosen just to keep things consistent. And actually, like we mentioned before, Canva is a great tool. You can
Right.
type
Yeah.
in your exact color code, or you could mess around within the like little color palette circle that they have on there, like drag it around, find something that really resonates with you, or just keep dragging and dropping different colors until you find the right one. And then it'll tell you that hex code starts with like the pound or the hashtag, and then six. It's a 6-digit code, and that will be universal all around. So you have that, you've set that in stone, and now you can use that all over your wedding.
Yeah, and you can even in Canva too use a color picker like on a photo. If there's like a photo of something and it's the exact color blue that you want to incorporate, you can even choose that color using Canva, pick stuff right out of
Oh,
photos.
perfect.
It's really, really easy to use. So we're Canva stands over here. We love
We
it.
are.
We use it daily. It's a
Seriously.
really great resource for all kinds of things. So, aside from colors, if you really want to get serious about your wedding branding, you can also choose to set aside certain fonts that you want to incorporate. You can use these for all kinds of print items. You can use them on your website. Of course, invitations, save the dates, any signage at your wedding. This will really help to just take that branding to the next level and keep things really cohesive throughout. You can use Canva for this to find different fonts on there. They exist. You can also use Pinterest if you see or end up pinning any photos of any text. You can use, there's actually a site that I really like. If you have a photo of a font that you really love, whatthefont.com, you can just upload a screenshot of it and it'll tell you, if it doesn't tell you the exact font, it'll give you lots of examples of fonts that are similar. A lot of these are paid fonts, so they will need to be purchased, but it'll give you an idea if you really fall in love with something. It'll tell you where to find it. So that's another great resource that I love.
I've never heard of that. I love that.
It's awesome. It's really good. The next thing to consider is using a wedding logo or a monogram or a motif of some kind. So this is totally optional, and to do this, you might want to hire a designer or a calligrapher to create something for you. So it could definitely be an added expense, But if this is something that you gravitate towards at all, I think it's a really cool touch that you can add. Of course, you could DIY it too. You could look on Pinterest for inspiration for something like this, and you could, of course, create it in Canva or elsewhere. It also doesn't have to necessarily be something that is professionally created. So, an example that I have heard of before is if you and your fiance maybe have like a matching tattoo, you could take that and digitalize it and use it across your wedding things. Once again, you could use it on invitations, decor, on your website, lots of different places. If you are wanting to create a custom crest or logo of sorts, we are huge fans of the Crest Bar. It's by Simply Jessica Marie. We will make sure and tag her Instagram in the show notes of this episode. She's really cool. She makes customizable watercolor crests with unique monogram designs. So she also has lots of hand painted icons. It's really cool.
We both were looking at it recently and we were like, oh my gosh, we both want things from it. There's like some like dogs that she's painted. There's different things that I just think would be so cool. I think this would be a really great gift to give as well. If you have if you have a friend who might be interested in one of these things, maybe as a bridal shower gift, I think she might even do some of her work and put them on pillows. Like, there's a lot of different ways that you can use this within your wedding, give it as a gift. My parents, I think, I'm pretty sure they have a set of either wine glasses or champagne flutes that are engraved with their like own monogram. But it's such a cool gift that they were given. And really it's like this keepsake. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, and I just feel like we were looking through it and we were like, oh, I kind of want to have what, like, we're not getting married, but things like this you can use for lots of different things. If you love, which you will, the colors and the vibe, the brand that you are creating for your wedding, if you get a crest based on this, then you're going to love it for years to come. It's going to be very connected to your personal style. So, like Caroline said, I think that the Crest Bar, Simply Jessica Marie, I believe that she makes them on all kinds of keepsakes. So this could end up becoming pieces that you can have in your home forever. Special mementos from your special day. So really, really cool. We're big fans.
Yeah, we are. We seriously are. Okay, so finally, our last step for you is to weave these branded elements throughout. So now you have your color palette, you have an inspiration board, you have a font maybe that you've picked out, and all of these keywords that have been guiding you through this whole process. And now you can bring this wedding brand to life. So the opportunities of where to use all of these elements are truly endless. Here's some examples. Yeah, everywhere. So we have a list for you if you want some ideas of where to start. Of course, a wedding website, save the dates and invitations, other paper goods, including place cards, programs, table numbers, other signage, table linens even. I've seen a lot of people get really creative with cocktail napkins or just the napkins at the setting. Like that's another place you could put a monogram. But place settings, place cards, escort cards, photo booth printouts, favor bags, stickers, tags, the wedding cake or desserts, and even the color or name for your signature cocktail. Everywhere. So, I mean, really, like, branding your wedding doesn't mean everything needs to be custom designed to match. Because, for example, you could totally pick a invitation or save the date from a site like Minted, where there are a lot of different artists who have created things already. And maybe it's not the exact hex code that you've chosen, but it's pretty close. Or maybe it's a font that's not necessarily one of the ones that you were thinking of using, but it's pretty close. As long as it still feels like it has the right vibe, the right aesthetic, and if you were to place that thing in your wedding mood board, it would still make sense, then I think it's absolutely a great thing to use.
So there can always be outliers when it comes to your brand. You don't have to be rigid, and this isn't meant to be something that stops you from doing things you want for the different aspects of your wedding. You can truly do whatever you want. But these are meant, I know Caroline mentioned this at the top, to serve as a guide for you and to make the decision process easier when it comes to all of these little things. So when it comes to picking the colors of your flowers or of your invitations or anything, those are laid out for you already, and it's going to make things a lot simpler, we think. So this is something to keep in mind. Like I said, there can definitely be outliers, but making sure that these things, just generally fit the vibe. Also, like Caroline said too, this doesn't mean that if you're gonna, my dog just sneezed. This doesn't mean that if you're, bless you, that if you're going to decide to brand your wedding, that you need to spend a whole bunch of extra money. You definitely don't. You can DIY a lot of these options, and this will help to elevate your wedding and make it look so much more high end. And you can do this for free. It might take a little bit more DIY on your end, but you certainly can hire lots of outside help to make these things happen for you. But you don't necessarily need to increase your budget in order to brand your wedding.
Yes. And I think that's the greatest thing, is that this is such an easy, free tool. Yes, it takes some time, DIY, but it really does elevate things. So if you couldn't tell, we love branding personally, professionally, for your wedding. We definitely recommend it, and we'd love to see what you come up with. If you have questions about this process, let us know. If you want to send us your mood board for any reason and see what we think, we always want to check it out. And there's a lot of different ways you can get in touch with us for that. But thank you for listening. This seriously is a special episode for us. This is actually kind of where the Guide Gals started. When we were creating this podcast, this is where we began, because we thought this is a great topic that people may not understand or might be intimidated by, because it sounds like it's this big process, but it's actually something that is so useful, and it's this tangible thing that will really help guide you in this process. So it really goes back to the heart of why we created the Guide Gals and really where we started. So very special episode for us, and we're really excited that we get to share it with you.
It is. And we're very passionate about this topic. We have so much fun with branding. Like Caroline said, she brands the months of her life. So we love this topic. And like she said too, this is special to us. When we filmed a trial episode for the podcast, it was on this subject. This isn't the first episode we've recorded, by the way. But when we did film an initial trial, it was this subject. So this was really fun. Thanks for hanging out with us for this episode, and for any of the others if you were there. Seriously, if you do use any of our advice here, if you decide to brand your wedding, create a mood board, a color palette, please share it with us. We would love to see it. You can reach out to us on Instagram at the Guide Gals Podcast. We share lots of behind the scenes there. You can also watch us on YouTube on the Here Comes the Guide channel. You can listen to us at Here Comes the Guide Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Lastly, you can visit our website, theguidegalspodcast.com, where you can find lots of resources, show notes on every single episode, where you can get granular and find anything from each episode that you'd like to reference. Find our full episode library there, and you can also drop us a line on our contact page over there. If you'd like to reach out, just say hi, or if you have any questions, episode suggestions, you can also connect with us on Instagram. Like we said, we would seriously love to hear from you. So
we seriously love it. That's the whole heart of this podcast, is that we want to walk alongside you in this wedding planning process. So this has been a fun episode, and we can't wait to share so many more with you. But until then, cheers.
Cheers. Oh, we have the Olipop. Nice.
We have the Olipop now. Yes.
I have a cold coffee.